Today on Green by Design,
we're talking organic till the cows come home, yeah! Welcome to Green by Design TV. I'm Greg.
And I'm Connie. And for the next half hour, we'll be your hosts as we take a look at what people all over are doing to lead healthier, more considered lives.
Connie and I are what we call newly greens, meaning we're trying to shed some of our not-so-green lifestyle choices in favor of some more sustainable alternatives.
That's right. And our journey today brings us out to the farm, where we're going to take a good look at organic food. And if you're not already familiar, we'll introduce you to community-supported agriculture.
And later, Connie will also give us some home composting tips with a visiting expert, just to make sure that your soil is in tip-top shape for that organic home garden that you're being inspired to plant.
That's right. But you don't have to have a garden to get something out of those tips. So now, why don't we start by getting extreme?
Today, we're at Upper Meadows Farm in Montague, New Jersey, speaking with owner-operator Leonard Polera. Len is going to give us his take on what it means to operate a sustainable farm.
Thank you for having us here.
My pleasure.
So, can you start by telling us a little bit about your farm and how long you've been here?
Well, it's there's never a short story about a farm, but my wife and I moved here in 1987. At one point in time, 1945 to 1956, my father had farmed this farm. My childhood dream had been to buy back the pieces of what my father had farmed and farm it. And so I've been doing that. So our total farm comprises 153 acres today. As our CSA has developed over the past 6 years, this being the 7th year, now I actually have, in addition to myself, those are the geese saying hi.
Hi, boys. Girls.
Well, yeah, they're just bossy.
They want to get on camera.
So in addition to myself, I have 2 full-time workers. And 3 part-timers who come and help with harvest and planting and other things. And I have a volunteer part-time help in the office, which is really crucial.
Do you mind if we go sit down? We'll continue our conversation a little bit?
Only if you let me change my shirt.
Oh, all right.
CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. The fundamental premise is that the farmer, the person who actually grows the food, has a direct relationship with the people who eat the food. The food community, the group at large, having an opportunity to have input into the types of vegetables that are grown and the varieties of vegetables that are grown, because they have direct feedback to the grower. Producer to consumer. You know, and in consumer, I don't mean just somebody who buys it. I mean the person who consumes it, the guy who eats it. For as many CSAs as I'm aware of, each one has a slightly different character, each one has a slightly different protocol of how they function.
Is there somebody who's kind of been with you from the beginning? I mean, can you give us kind of an example of the type of a relationship that you may have with somebody?
Well, we have some people who are chefs, personal chefs. We have one of our location coordinators is an executive chef. We have folks who are involved in nutrition. We have folks who are involved in different aspects of health.
When we return, we'll share some tips for finding a CSA, and later Connie digs into composting.
Ride a bike. If just 1 million people replaced a 5-mile car trip once a week with a bike ride, we could reduce CO2 emissions by about 100,000 tons a year. Answer the call.
This could be good. Hey, you.
Welcome back. Today we're talking community shared agriculture with Upper Meadows Farms in Montague, New Jersey.
So Connie and I decided that we wanted to join a CSA. So we began our search by just typing CSA in our town into Google, and we got a lot of hits. There's actually one that delivers right here in our town. As an alternative to that, what you can do is go to a local farmer's market and speak to the farmers there. And that's preferable in a lot of respects because then you get to actually meet the farmer and really see what they produce.
Right. Once we found a farm we liked, we picked up an individual share. But you can get an individual or a family share, and they range from $300 to $600. The time to buy a share is the end of the season, so fall's a good time to start looking.
So it is essentially direct marketing from farmer to end user, correct? So how do you connect with the end user? How do they find you?
We do have a website. Our website is uppermeadowsfarm.com. We have a relationship with Local Harvest, which is a wonderful website run by Guillermo Payet out on the West Coast that's doing a great job of connecting people with local resources.
I think it's all about getting local food, right? Food grown locally, so it doesn't have to travel so far.
We function within a local community, and so here's the question, how do you define that? Our local community is immediate, the folks who come here to the farm and pick up. We also have a broader community where we distribute to people in Flanders, New Jersey, which is about 30 miles south. We distribute in West Orange, New Jersey, which is about 50 miles south. And we distribute in Manhattan, which is exactly 70 miles south. So we have both an immediate local community and a more regional community.
To give people a sense of reference, do you have any idea how far traditional food is traveling to get?
Well, the conventional food distribution system that exists today finds it completely appropriate for the average food item to travel 12 to 1,500 miles from producer to plate.
It's quite different. Can you get organic seeds through a CSA?
Well, that's a very good question. You know, the seeds and the plants that we're dealing with have evolved over millennia, and the genetic engineering has shortened that process to such an extent. The only problem is that it may take 20 or 30 years before we really know how they're going to behave. We are saving more and more of our own seed here on farm for that very reason. There are some wonderful organizations here in New Jersey, the Garden State Heirloom Seed Savers Society, which is a mouthful, but they're great. And certainly there are some really nice seed companies who produce and provide certified organic seed. Among them, two of my favorite are High Mowing, which is up in Vermont, and the Fedco company, which is a cooperative up in Maine. But it would be really neat for a CSA to offer seeds to their members. That's not a bad idea at all. Well, I'll have to see if anyone's interested. Thanks.
CSA members share in the highs and lows of the farm. In a good season, when the farm produces a lot of food, CSA members actually end up with more food for their money.
But if the crops have a bad year due to drought or pesticides or whatever, the members do see less of a return on their investment.
Now those risks are balanced by some decided advantages. First of all, the food is much fresher. In the case of Upper Meadows, Len really tries to harvest his food 24 to 48 hours before drop-off.
In contrast, produce at the supermarket can be days or even weeks old by the time you purchase it.
Now another advantage would be the variety of the foods. Because he doesn't have to package for shippability and things like that, he grows a much wider variety, which has some real nutritional and even flavor benefits.
Definitely. When we return, we'll talk organic.
And later, Connie will get our compost pile in order with a visit from master composter Elisa Margarita. We'll be right back.
Human heart, just over 1% of your body weight, but critical to your survival. Our Earth has places, just over 1% of its surface, which are critical to our survival. They're called biodiversity hotspots, and Conservation International is fighting to protect them. These hotspots are home to over 60% of the world's biodiversity. Conservation International has helped save hundreds of species and millions of acres. Visit conservation.org.
Welcome back. Today we're speaking with Leonard Polera of Upper Meadows Certified Organic CSA.
You know, a CSA offers the farmer more financial stability because shares bought in the off-season give that farmer income to buy supplies.
And also any risks are distributed across all the members of the CSA, so the farmer doesn't bear that burden alone.
Sure.
And ultimately, this serves to the benefit of the members because they, in the long term, see a better return on their investment. Really, at its heart, CSAs strive to be a more sustainable financial model for the farmer.
And in the spirit of sustainability, Upper Meadows Farm is also certified organic.
So I've been certified organic since 1992, sort of before the curve.
I guess my general conception of organic would be no pesticides, no antibiotics,
Right, no hormones.
no hormones.
You're describing organic in a comparative sense. You're comparing it to conventional and you're saying organic is different because these are the things that conventional agriculture practices and organic does not.
Right.
Organic is far more than that. Organic is sustainable use of the soil. Organic is working with bioactive composts and living soil, and organic is practicing rotation. As an organic farmer, you're observing what nature has to offer, you're learning about the plants and animals that you are steward of, and you are managing them in a symphonic relationship so that you create an optimum productivity. The fundamental basis of organic was the precautionary rule, which is first do no harm. The biggest issue that I have with conventional agriculture is that it is always seeking maximum. And we all know that when you push something to a maximum, at some point something will break.
Right.
You're consuming, you know, you're striving for that.
Yeah.
When you push for an optimum, you're really raising the level at which all of those systems function.
You know, most people have the perception that organic food is more expensive. They go to the store, it's more expensive. Why is that?
Well, it's more work. It's
So
much
it's
more
labor.
work.
Labor
So
is a big
labor is a big part of it. We have made the commitment in labor to have enough people here to harvest the food and get it to you as if you came here and harvested it yourself and drove it to your table.
So as we've mentioned in the past, Connie and I are really trying to go green on a budget. So to help guide you as to where to spend the extra money on organics, we're going to share what's considered the 12 most high-risk food items. Now those being apples, bell peppers, celery, cherries, grapes, nectarines, peaches, pears, potatoes, red raspberries, spinach, and strawberries. As a general rule, you can just think in terms of those thin-skinned fruits and vegetables where you would actually eat the skin of the vegetable itself.
And even if you peeled it, I think it's thin enough probably that it goes right through in some cases. And there are some conventional foods that they say are generally safe to eat by the conventional form, and that would be asparagus, mangoes, onions, pineapple, papaya, and peas.
I'm very impressed.
Yes, thank you. And I don't know where they're coming up with these lists. I'm sure there are more foods that are safe conventionally and more foods that are better to buy organic, but I think that's a general rule.
Yeah. And then another thing to bear in mind is when you're washing your vegetables, you can actually do that in vinegar. And vinegar actually helps to strip off a lot of the pesticides.
Now, is that diluted vinegar, a little water and vinegar? Because that's what I would use.
Okay, I buy that.
What you're paying for is you're paying for the full cost of production.
Okay.
Part of that full cost of production translates into the environmental benefits that are consistent with organic agriculture. You are not going to have to pay any part of your taxes at any point in time to clean up the water quality because of my organic agriculture. You are not going to have to pay the health costs that would be associated from eating something that is laced with extra MSG so that it makes you hungrier so you eat more. You're not going to pay those prices in a public health expense when you purchase something that is an organically produced product. I don't use an herbicide in between the rows of tomatoes. That sounded funny to say. What we do is we mulch. And the mulch acts both as a host location for earthworms and predatory beetles. It also controls weeds, and some crops simply enhance the flavor and the growing ability of other crops. I always plant basil with tomatoes. I get a better quality basil and a better quality tomato in that field.
Interesting. And they go nice on the plate together after.
Well, they do work nicely together, that's for sure.
What if there's something to that?
Well, it makes hand weeding a lot of fun. So rotation and companion planting and accentuating the diversity of the cropping in fields is definitely something I do. So that as you do what you do this year, everything you do this year, while it produces a product for you to consume this year, it actually is with a significant focus on improving the potential of that field to produce what it is you're going to hope to have for successive years. So it's a continuum.
So here's some great sustainable news. The organic markets have grown by nearly 20% consistently every year since the 1990s. And now 40% of the U.S. population use organics regularly. So we're in good company.
Yeah, that's right.
After the break, Len waxes philosophical and Connie gets dirty in the compost pile.
Flip the switch. Turning off the lights when leaving the room for more than a fraction of a second actually uses less energy than leaving them on. Answer the call.
This could be good. Hey, you.
Welcome back to Green by Design TV. Today we're talking community-supported agriculture and organic farming with Len Polera of Upper Meadows Farm in Montague, New Jersey.
We asked Len what motivated him to take on the challenging life of an organic farmer.
Yeah, wow, what's up with that?
I still am a performing musician, and that I do, I so to speak, I call that food for my soul. In a sense, this is also food for my soul. One of the ways in which I was very fortunate, when I was about 24 years old, I realized that I was most happy when I was busy performing, making music, or busy here working on the farm. And so from that point on, I really started thinking about how can I do both things. Yes, my rusting out Chevy Venture is not exactly a Bentley or a Rolls, but you know what, it carries a lot of vegetables around and it gets me back and forth to gigs. The real key to success is to be able to envision your goal and to be able to understand which steps you need to take to achieve your goal most efficiently. A friend of mine really, as I was lamenting the one day because people were complaining that it seemed like I was going in these diverse directions, a friend of mine looked at me and he said, no, he said, you're tacking. And I said, tacking? He said, yeah, like sailing. If the wind isn't blowing right behind you to move you along, you have to tack. So sometimes you're going in one direction, sometimes you're going in another, but you never make those moves without heading towards your goal. And I thought that was a great alliteration of sort of an allegory of what it is that we've been doing here. We've been tacking.
We apply to many things in life too. That's
being able to envision where we want to be, not necessarily knowing the ultimate colors and shapes and sizes, but knowing that this is where we want to be, and having the I suppose you would have to call it confidence or determination or both, to just say, okay, this is what it takes, we're going.
Yeah, that's right.
We want to thank Len for taking the time to teach us about CSAs and organics, and really for caring enough about sustainability to apply those ideals to his own business.
Yeah, and you know that closing metaphor about sailing applies not only to being a newly green, but also to so many things in life. If circumstances take you in a direction you don't really want to go, if we just keep tacking, we will eventually get to that destination. For us, it's living a more balanced life.
That's very deep, honey.
Well, thanks, hon.
So no Green by Design TV would be complete without some practical, inexpensive green suggestions. So here's Connie with a slightly different take on whole goods.
About 1/3 of our landfills are taken up by organic waste from our yards and our kitchens. But this material can be reused in the form of compost. Adding compost to gardens, lawns, indoor plants can greatly improve the quality of the soil, and it's free. But there's more to it than that. Composting is a sustainable choice because landfills are crowded and more space is not easily found. So it's a great opportunity to recycle and conserve. Greg and I had an amazing garden this year, but we're not experts, and we're pretty sure that our soil is in need of a little improving, I think he's cute. So we've invited master composter Elisa Margarita to our home, Margaritas, to give us a demonstration. Hi, Elisa, how are you?
Hi, Connie.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
Can you tell us a little bit about your certification in composting and how you got it, how you obtained it?
It's through the New York City Composting Project,
Okay.
and that is a community-based program that teaches us how to compost, and then we go out and teach others how to compost.
Great, thank you so much for coming today. You know, I'll show you this. Greg and I use this container to collect our kitchen scraps. And then every other day or so we bring it out, we throw it in this pile here. And that's really about all we do, and that's evident probably in the garden that practically grows out of this. Can you kind of tell us about how to manage this pile and consequently what to do when we get to the garden?
Okay. Well, first of all, you don't have to get a fancy container. This is perfectly fine.
Right.
Some people like to use a yogurt container.
Like those jumbo yogurt.
Yeah, jumbo yogurt container. You could line the container with newspaper on top and bottom after you fill it to eliminate any odors that start to come out. Or the other option is to put it in a Ziploc bag and then freeze your kitchen scraps.
Okay, that's a good
And
idea
then you could bring them out when you're ready to bring them to your pile.
Okay.
Bring them out here.
Okay.
And then, well, as you said, things are kind of taking root and growing. And to eliminate that, you might want to condense your compost pile, make it smaller, 3 by 3, and bring the walls up so that your compost pile can heat up. Because compost is that rich, soily material. You want everything to break down and decompose, and so you can enhance your soil in your garden and use it in potting soil as well. So what you could do is start chopping up your kitchen scraps smaller, and that'll also help things decompose faster. And you want to look at it as though you're making a lasagna. You're going to layer browns and greens and sprinkle some finished compost in the middle.
Okay.
The finished compost you can get at any gardening center.
Okay, if you don't have your own already
Right.
made. Yeah.
If you don't have your own already made. And you start with the browns, and examples of browns would be like you have over here.
Great.
Dried leaves are browns, twigs, wood chips, sawdust, newspaper that's been shredded, that's also brown leaves, hay, dry hay, even your grass clippings that are dried out.
Right.
That would be your browns. And then your greens are, of course, your kitchen scraps, your tea bags, coffee grinds, fresh clippings.
And this is the compost, the completed?
Right.
Or
this is some
finished
finished compost that I brought along, and you can see it's that black, crumbly type of soil. And one way you could test to see if your compost is finished or not is to actually put it in a baggie like this, seal it, and then you do a smell test. You wait a week, open the baggie, and if it smells earthy, you know your compost is finished. If it smells like ammonia, then it still needs time to decompose. Besides having the browns and greens, you know, your compost pile needs 2 more other factors. It needs air and water. So you want to make sure you have good circulation getting into your compost pile. And one way to help that, to aerate it, is by turning your compost. So you want to turn it once a week. You just take your shovel or pitchfork and just break up the roots and just start to turn it.
So we should probably cut this up a little bit smaller.
Yeah, like I said, the finer you chop it, the faster your compost will go. And just sort of turn it over. And at this point, this is a good time where you could water it. And you could take a spray bottle and water down your compost.
And you know what? I heard that you could add, and I brought it out to show you. Can you add like dust and hair from a vacuum?
Yes.
Canister?
This is also great. You could use lint from the dryer. You could use the vacuum dust. You'll just use that in your green layer, the nitrogen layer. And then on top of that, you'll put the shredded newspaper or the browns. If you have a chipper and you chipped wood already, or you have lots of leaves available, you could just put them to the side, keep them on stock, and then add them to your compost, continually layering, as I said before, browns, greens, and then finished compost in between, because the finished compost is what contains the microbes, and that helps kickstart your compost and break things down faster.
And what about people who live in apartments and condos and don't have a garden or yard space? They can still compost.
Right, there's not a problem. You could still compost, as we said, take your kitchen scraps and put them in the freezer, and then look into a community garden center. Most communities have a center where they have a compost bin running, and you just drop your scraps off there, and then you could take finished compost to put in your plants at home, your potting soil, or your garden.
Right, right. Can they use a can if they have like a terrace or?
Yeah, if you have permission from your landlord and you have a terrace, you could get one of these tin cans. Just make sure that you're going to drill holes in it to bring the air in. And again, you're going to do layering. If you don't have access to branches and leaves, what you could do is just use the shredded newspaper or shredded paper and layer your, make sure you keep layering it with browns and greens.
And if you wanted to spend a little more money, you could probably buy one that already has the holes.
Yes, you can. They have those available as well.
That's great. And by the way, if you want more information on Elisa and what she does or the certification process or anything we're doing here today, we will have more detail on our website, www.greenbydesign.tv. So you want to talk a little bit about once we go over to the garden?
Sure.
All right, great. Let's go. Okay, so you can see we had a pretty good garden this year. I was, really pleased with it. So tell me, once this dies, what do I do?
Okay, well, basically you have two options. You could cut everything back and shred it up and bring it over to your compost pile and use it as your greens. And then you would layer browns like your dried leaves on top of that or shredded newspaper. Or the other option is to cut it back and leave it here. And you could take compost, put compost on top of that and then newspapers or leaves on top of that. And that would decompose over the winter and bring nutrients back into your soil.
Fantastic. Well, that's probably what we'll do this season. And then come spring, just a little more compost again?
Yeah, every time you're going to do planting, it's a good idea to add compost. So when, planting, you could plant all year long, but most of it's going to happen in the spring. You'll put about 3 to 4 inches of compost on top of your area that you're going to work it down, till it into the soil about 6 inches deep.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks again, and now I have to put you to work.
Sounds good. Let's go.
So that wraps up this edition of Green by Design TV. Hopefully we've inspired you to check out CSAs and farmers markets, or at the very least to consider organic alternatives when shopping for your next meal.
Maybe we've even inspired you to grow your own. As usual, this show, along with notes and links, will be available on our website, greenbydesign.tv.
You can also contact us through the website or via our regular snail mail, and our address will appear after the credits. So until the next time, keep thinking green. It's good for the earth.
And it's good for you.
It can't come home! It can't come home!
That was pretty good.
What,
Twinkle toes through the cilantro.
Oh, for joining CSA?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Mike.
Today on Green by Design.
We're talking organic until the cows come home. As we've mentioned before,
What?
you don't want anything with any personality, sure.
You're so cute. I'm becoming a vegetarian, that's it.